everyone, Gaijin Goombah here. Yeah, just me this time. Little G's already on break, and by the time you guys see this video, I'm actually probably going to be halfway through my visit to Japan. But before I left, I wanted to do one more video that I've been meaning to do for quite some time. And by quite some time, I mean 5 months. So, last time that I was in Japan, the big thing that I went to with Aki and a whole bunch of my friends was the Honen Matsuri, or Honensai, which in English means Rich Year Festival, because that's pretty much what it is. This particular festival, though, is known as the, Johnson Festival, for lack of a more monetizable way to put it, and right away I'm sure you guys can understand why I've been so hesitant on making this video. No matter how I spin it, this video is going to be demonetized, its searchability is going to be throttled, and likely put my channel in another state of viewership decline because of this choice, but here's the thing, guys. Me, you, we're all adults. I checked my demographics, we are all adults, and I'm gonna treat you guys as one. I do still think that it's asinine that I'm gonna be punished for making this video because this is culture. This is the living world that we dwell in. And once and for all, to all the prudes, to all the gawkers, to everyone who looks at the Honen Matsuri and things like it with ethnocentric glasses, and anyone who would silence this video, I'm going to tell you right now that despite the symbolism that you may see in this video, these celebrations are not of a debaucherous nature. At all. And I'm gonna prove that despite what the algorithm thinks. Because the Honen Matsuri is prayer and hope for revitalized reproductive energies of man, animal, and especially crops. And the overt symbolism going on in this Matsuri is actually in reference to a purely monogamous relationship that is so freaking strong that it transcends time. So what's Honensai all about? Well, like I just got done saying, Honensai actually revolves a whole lot more around crops and agriculture than you might think. It's actually hoping for the blessings of the 5 staple grains, those being millet, rice, soybeans, barley, wheat, and azuki beans. But the big celebration going on in this particular festival is a reunification of Tamehime no Mikoto and Takeina Dane no Mikoto, now both very respected kami. See, Tamehime no Mikoto was actually the daughter of a really wealthy landowner / warlord during the Kofun period of about 300 to 600 AD, give or take a few years. And her husband, Takeina Dane no Mikoto, was a local prince who would unfortunately die at an early age in a far-off territory in Japan. So, those are basically the overall reasons why this is celebrated, but what actually is this celebration? Well, let's break it down. Honensai actually takes place at Takata Jinja Shrine on March 15th of every year. Pretty close to spring, but still cool enough you're gonna need a jacket. And Takata Jinja Shrine itself is actually in the city of Komaki, or Komaki-shi, which is kind of an hour north of Nagoya, somewhere between that and Inuyama. It's not too hard to get to. But once you get to Takata Jinja Mai Station, it's actually just a straight short walk up a street to get to the shrine proper. And for this festival, there's absolutely no possible way you're gonna get lost. There will be a crowd of people that get you there. Now, once you actually get to Takata Jinja Shrine, even early in the morning, there is so much to do and there's so much there. Food, games, drinks. This is a huge Matsuri. And it's all themed around one thing, which I'm sure you all can probably guess. This candy brings happiness. It comes in a set, so I got one for me and one for you, hun. One for you, babe. What? It's good. It's good. It's the good stuff.
I've already eaten like 2 dongs.
Well, eat more. This is the festival. Everything from hot dogs to desserts to snacks to even attire and cosplay. Everything that this festival is seems to revolve around one particular thing. But everyone, whether it be foreigner or Japanese, is completely in on it, and everyone's having a good time. And that's something that I actually appreciate a whole lot when it comes to this particular festival, is that, I guess on a personal note, Matsuris to me have always felt like there's this big segregation between foreigner and native Japanese when it comes to going to these different Matsuris. And Honensai is the one Matsuri that I've been to where I feel like that doesn't exist. It feels like everyone is getting along, everyone's laughing, everyone's having a good time and talking, and a lot of that has to do with drinking. I will 100% admit that. Honensai, everyone gets along because a lot of people are drunk. But, I mean, to anyone who knows anything about Japan, you know that when alcohol is involved, that's when people can loosen up and they can be more themselves, and it's actually kind of a not terrible thing. So let's say you had your fill of specialty-shaped chocolate bananas and hot dogs. Where do you want to go next from there? Well, it kind of depends, because the big procession, which is what this entire festival is known for, ends at Takata Jinja Shrine, but it starts from one of two different shrines depending on what year it is. For odd years, it starts at Kumanosha Shrine, and for even years, it starts at Ogata. And since I was there, you know, this year, 2019, it actually started off at Kumanosha. But once you get there, man, everything is there. Oh, where do I even get started? Every single item that is used in the procession is actually going to be here. There are some offerings, there are a couple of basic banners of Toyotomi Hideyoshi's Mon or crest, because I believe he had territory there, or he had a castle there, something along those lines. But, there's also what seems to be a Mikoshi Pelican. Basically, a Mikoshi is like a portable shrine, and a Pelican, well, you carry people in it, people of high ranking and importance. It's kind of a mix of that, with Takai Nadane himself in it, or a representation of him. And then you come across the legendary banner of this entire event, and I don't think I have to say anything about it whatsoever. But then, just to the right of that is the star itself. This thing is a Hinoki cypress tree, 10 feet long, 620 pounds, and when put in its Mikoshi, actually will weigh 885 pounds. Now, the thing about this is that this actually used to be a much smaller Mikoshi, I suppose I could call it. It actually had a strawman samurai with a much smaller, yeah, representing Takei Nadane. But this particular special object is called a Yobutsu, or an Owasegata, meaning male object and grand thingy object, respectively. Now, this thing is said to hold a whole heck of a lot of power, particularly of Takei Nadane's energy. And, boy howdy, do I have a story to tell you guys. So, unlike a lot of things in Japan, and particularly more holy relics such as this, you actually could go up and touch this thing. Which, you know, I did. But, for me, I had to kind of squat under and get underneath it, and then get my picture. Well, here's the thing. As soon as I touched this thing, my pants ripped. As soon as I touched this giant wooden, thing, my pants ripped right down the middle of the crotch. And, I tell you what, I took it as a symbol of the distribution of true big dick energy. I will leave it at that. But let's actually get to the actual procession, shall we? God. So, first and foremost, the start of this big giant procession, parade, whatever you want to call it, is led by what I thought was a Tengu. I mean, you look at this thing and you think, yeah, it's a Tengu, it's got the red face, long nose, all that, but no! This actually is someone dressed up in representation of Sarutahiko no Okami, basically the deity who led the descent of Amaterasu from heaven to earth. Kind of a big deal! Which are then followed closely by two men who are holding offerings of food. Now, right after this, the whole area needs to be purified, and there will be a gentleman with a bowl of specially prepared salt, a purifying salt, and will be tossing it around as the procession moves forward. I mean, you know, this is holy stuff, it needs to be sanctified. And then come the banners, and the bearers of said banners. There's usually 2 or 3 some odd. Like I said before, you're gonna see a lot of Toyotomi Hideyoshi's Mon because, well, he kind of ran the place, apparently. But then you see that wonderful flag once more, and I don't know if these get replaced every year or if they've been using the same one for a long time. I actually took a part of Honensai about almost 10 years ago, when I was living abroad in Japan, and I don't know, it looks like the exact same thing, so I'm really wondering if it's the same flag or not. Now, following the banners are the dignitaries, and these are government officials, I think business owners, people in higher places of power, and they go around, they shake your hand, they make small talk. can only assume that they're looking for re-election, and hey, I don't blame the guys for that. But you'll notice that over their very, very nice suits, they have these gold shawls, which are very, very similar to what Buddhist monks would wear. And this is kind of representative of when Shinto and Buddhism were very much kind of unified when it comes to Japan's religion. Now, since the Meiji Restoration period, I think around then, the two religions have been more separated out into their own thing, but back in those days, they were very much harmoniously together. There was very little difference between the two. They just kind of came together in this wonderful symbiotic relationship. So, now after the dignitaries come the court musicians, and I think this is probably one of my most favorite aspects of this entire procession. Simply not just because it sounds really cool, but the instruments are so unique and interesting. My favorite of which being the sho. Now, how can I describe this thing? A sho is basically like a bagpipe minus the bag. And I know that sounds terrible, but I have a complete lack I just completely lack a better comparison between instruments. But the sho, by and large, it's a bundle of 17 bamboo pipes, 15 of which have metal reeds, and you blow into it covering different holes, and to play different intonations and tones, you just kind of release those holes. But the coolest thing about this instrument is that it looks like a phoenix, like a hole, as would be said in Japan. And supposedly it makes music that is comparable to, quote, light shining down from the heavens. Now, I'll probably talk more about this instrument in a video further down the line, but I mean, ooh, I really love this. Now, after the musicians comes a group of women in very, very traditional garb, carrying around 2-foot, wooden thingies, like children. Now, there's a very particular reason for this. All of these women are aged 36, and for whatever reason, I'm really not sure why, I need to research more on it, but 36 is apparently a bad luck year for women, so they're chosen to carry around these representations of Takei Nadane, and to kind of get rid of their bad luck. And don't worry, ladies, there's a bad luck year for men, but we're going to get to that in just a little bit. Now, after the women pass is another event that I thoroughly enjoy, and these are the Sakaki Tree Sake carts. Oh yes. But here's the cool thing. These particular trees, well, they're not in bloom yet, and there's nothing going to be in bloom for at least another week, sometime in early April. So what they do is that different officials and organizers, they will grab these, they're white, it's white fabric with red polka dots, and they tear them into little itty bitty shreds, and then they'll tie them to the tree to make it look like it's blooming like sakura, like cherry blossoms. And then they take these trees and put them in this cart of the best sake I have ever freaking had, and it's free. Oh, excuse me. Oh man, I can just freaking taste it right now. Now, some people say one of the reasons why they're offering free sake is because it's to calm everyone's nerves because of everything that's already transpired, to make people feel a little less embarrassed. I don't know if I believe that, but then again, you don't need an excuse for good sake, particularly when it's free. Now, the funny thing about these Sakaki trees themselves is that once this procession is done, and we'll talk a little bit more about this later, they're actually, all the branches are broken down, and they're given to different people. Now, people will scramble for these. If you watched Akidere's video about this, I can't remember if she mentioned it or not, but farmers will scramble like crazy for these branches because they're basically like good luck charms for good harvests, and people take it very, very seriously. Think of it as spiritual insurance against natural disasters. Now, after the carts leave, comes the physical representation of Takei Nadane no Mikoto himself in his Mikoshi. And this is a symbolic physical reunion of him coming home to his wife. And the reason why he's coming home to his wife, we'll get to that in a second. Because after that comes the star of the show, the suggested symbolic reunion of himself and his wife, Tamahime no Mikoto, carried by 12 men in shifts over a mile until it finally reaches its resting place in Takata Jinja Shrine. However, this is not quickly carried. It's pretty slow. In fact, for us, when we watched it, there were a lot of stop-and-go moments. Can you imagine being one of those 12 men carrying around an 860-pound Mikoshi? Ooh. And they don't just carry it, they'll actually spin it around in celebration. You can actually see the physical exhaustion on these guys' faces, but everyone's having fun. Now, you guys remember how I talked about the women who were 36 years old and 36 was kind of an unlucky year for women? Well, all the guys carrying this shrine are 42 years old. And again, I'm not sure why, but I know this to be true. 42 is an unlucky year for men, so they're the ones that are carrying around the shrine to kind of get rid of that negative energy and bad luck. Now, it actually took about 15 minutes to get all of these shrines and such into Takata Jinja Shrine proper, and I can only imagine what those guys were going through trying to get that 860-pound Mikoshi all the way in. Now, one of the things I'm sure you guys are probably questioning right now is why in the world Takai Nadane is celebrated to come home? I mean, doesn't he live at home with his wife? And the answer to that is no, he didn't. See, here's the thing. Back in Kofun period Japan, men, women, and children supported and were supported by their village or town rather than an individual family unit. There was a marriage system called the Tsuma Doikon, which was a dual local relationship where couples just didn't live together. The husband would periodically visit the home of the wife at night to do the deed and generally spend time with her and the family, but husbands and wives led separate lives completely in separate communities. Now that covers the procession, but we're not quite done. We got one more event that we gotta talk about when it comes to Honensai. The Mochi Nage. And boy, is this probably the most hazardous thing that I have ever done during a Matsuri. So, it goes like this. Organizers and representatives chuck out fist-sized mochi rice cakes and sakaki tree branches out to the people. And like I just said, this can be extremely dangerous, not only because of the sheer amount of people in the crowd, but the sheer amount of rock-hard mochi rice cakes are getting thrown your way. These are not soft. These are not the stereotypical mochi that you think of. These are very solid, very hard mochi that can really freaking hurt. As, well, Joey the anime man learned the hard way. I was actually standing right next to him when one of these things beamed him in the face. However, we were able to get it. And if you are able to nab some of these delicious mochi, you can make them into wonderful delectables like these mochi chips that my friend Tomo made. And that's the end of Honensai, but not quite the end of our adventure for the day, because there was one other place that me, Joey the anime man, Aki Dearest, Tomo Hutch, all of us, a place that we visited to kind of even the scale, so to speak. A wonderful little Buddhist temple called Mama Kannon. Now here's the thing about Mama Kannon. As soon as you walk into this place, you immediately know what it's about. Boy howdy, memories everywhere. Everywhere. Statues, foliage, even the te mizoe where you're supposed to wash your hands and purify yourself is themed around lactating lady lumps. Now, on the surface, I'm sure everyone's thinking, well, this is pretty crass and immature, but it's actually quite the opposite. These are all symbols to a great kindness and miracle that happened here. So, for those of you not well versed in Buddhism, Kannon is an ultra-popular goddess of mercy, and Mama Kannon enshrines the concept of Kannon's mercy to struggling mothers, with a very particular story. During the Edo period, around the 18th century, there was a woman who was in great pains and mourning at the sudden loss of her husband, and the shock was so drastic that she could no longer provide milk for her child and the two would soon starve. In fact, things had become so dire that she had contemplated suicide and taking her baby with her, as neither of them would no longer have to suffer. Now, one day there was a kind old woman who saw her suffering and offered her an onigiri rice ball. However, instead of eating it right away, she offered it to Kannon at this very temple, praying for mercy for herself and for her baby. Days had passed and the woman's pains were worsening and worsening, and she and her child were starving more and more. However, at the moment she felt most dire, her milk began to flow once again. So again, what on the surface may seem lewd, crass, and inappropriate to us on this side of the Pacific has a very thoughtful and spiritual meaning behind it. This temple represents the mercy that Kannon gives and how she saved a mother and child from death. There's nothing gross here. It's all very human. As for the temple itself in modern times though, people are encouraged to ask for Mama Kannon's favor through a spiritual ritual. A fairly simple affair with bowing, praying, but completing the ritual itself is a pretty unique experience. And though the temple is devoted to milk production and breast health in general, a lot of prayers on Enma tablets are asking for bigger cup sizes, which I can't help but feel is a bit sacrilegious. I know this video wasn't my usual flair with lots of high-powered edits and a big focus on connecting games and anime to Japanese culture, but Sometimes I just want to talk about the culture by itself. It doesn't always have to have a connection. Sometimes there are experiences that are so unique and special that the only way to describe them is to just describe them. And that's why I wanted to talk about Honensai and Mama Canon. We joke about this stuff all the time. We let the dispositions of our own culture judge that which we don't understand with great haste. But I think it's important to remember that it's never that simple. That we take the time to understand why these things are the way that they are, despite the prejudice of the perceptions of our own culture. So with that, guys, thanks for watching. If you guys haven't seen the Honensai videos that Joey the Anime Man and Akidiris made, I highly suggest you go check them out. I make a few appearances in them. In the meantime, I'll be back in the next week or so to get back to regular content. But if you guys enjoyed this format, let me know in the comments. And as always, until next time, this is Gaijin Goombah, signing out.